We're here with Karen Pryor, and we're going to talk a little bit about her new book, Fierce Convictions, and it's about Hannah More. Tell us, first of all, just who was Hannah More?
That's a good question. Nobody really knows who Hannah More is today, which is why I wrote the book, but Hannah More is basically the female Wilberforce. Most people remember William Wilberforce and his campaign to end the slave trade in Great Britain, and Hannah More was a friend and colleague of him. She lived from 1745 until 1833, just after the slaves in Great Britain were set free. And in my book, Fierce Convictions, the subtitle says it all. Hannah More was a poet, a reformer, and an abolitionist, and she accomplished a great deal in her life, especially for a woman.
Yeah, tell us just briefly some of the things she accomplished.
Well, she started out as a literary writer and made her way in London and became sort of the toast of the town there, and got to socialize with a lot of the literary greats like Samuel Johnson and David Garrick, and made quite a splash, especially coming from the small city of Bristol and being born to a middle-class school teacher. She rose to quite a bit of fame in her lifetime, but she eventually developed more of an evangelical faith. Although she was always a member of the Church of England and remained an Anglican her whole life, she was an evangelical. And when she befriended John Newton, the former slave ship captain and author of the hymn Amazing Grace, and William Wilberforce and some other leading evangelicals, she left the literary life and began writing tracts and treatises and books designed to reform the morals and manners of British society from high to low. And of course, her most famous efforts, or most substantial ones, were those with Wilberforce and Newton, those efforts to abolish the slave trade. And she wrote poetry that helped to readers to imagine and understand the humanity of the African slaves, something that most of the British citizens were shielded from. They didn't really see slavery in front of them, and they didn't understand the horrors of it. And so Moore's poetry and her tracts helped to take away the blinders of the English citizens, so that they could see what slavery was at the same time that people like Wilberforce were campaigning in the political realm.
So what are some lessons that you've drawn out in the book, or you could even draw out for us now, just a few of the lessons from her life, from how she did this, and things that we could take for our own context today?
There are a lot of lessons. One is simply that Hannah More was a woman in a world that did not esteem women or give them much of a platform, yet she became a leader, and yet she did that as a faithful biblical Christian. She maintained her strong commitment to biblical and orthodox doctrine, yet still rose to prominence and used all the gifts that God gave her and the opportunities to advance the gospel in Great Britain. That's one lesson for us as women. Another lesson, I think, is the way that she overcame so many personal obstacles in her life, not only the obstacle of being a woman, but also as someone who suffered from a great deal of physical illnesses and personal attacks. Anyone who is a leader like that is certainly going to attract controversy and criticism, and she did, yet she persevered. And that's another lesson. Moore and her evangelical friends brought about a great many changes, and some of them were pretty rapid and immediate changes, such as teaching the poor to read. She opened a number of Sunday schools, and she helped the poor, and those were results that she could see immediately. But the campaign to end the slave trade took decades after decades. Wilberforce died just before the slaves were set free, and Hannah More died shortly afterwards. So it took nearly half of her life to accomplish that single goal. And so the perseverance that she showed, I think, is an important lesson.
And if I can pick up on that, that's something that perhaps we're not very good at today. I mean, especially when the way you just phrased it, this kind of perseverance, this longevity for a cause. We can get fired up about a cause for when we see a commercial or we're at an event, yet this idea that that culture takes time to shape and change, and our calling to be faithful. And so I appreciate that. I appreciate you writing this book. Fierce Convictions. Go read it. We're proud of this book. We're proud of you, and excited for Karen to be part of what we're doing at the center.